Good afternoon again, and please welcome the President and CEO of IREX, Kristin Lord.
Good afternoon, Mandela Washington Fellows. My name is Kristin Lord, and I'm the President and CEO of IREX, a global Go IREX, a global education and development nonprofit that just celebrated its 50th anniversary this month. Yeah. We at IREX are extremely proud to have run this program in partnership with the Bureau, with our good friends at the State Department's Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs for the last 5 years. It is a true labor of love for us, and it's a privilege that we take very seriously. We are grateful to the State Department, USAID, bipartisan support in the US Congress, the executive branch, and all our partners in the US government who make this extraordinary program possible. This is a program that serves African and US interests while building mutual understanding and opportunities for partnership across business, government, and civil society. Before turning things over to our esteemed panel, I'd like to share just a few words about IREX, because I know that by now, every single one of you has spent a lot of time with our team. Am I right? Fellows, please give our IREX team a round of applause, by the way. Yes. As I think you know, they have worked day and night in order to help get you here, get you to your 27 institutes, organize your curriculum, organize your professional leadership development plans, your professional development experiences, this summit, all the alumni work back at home. So really, they love it, it's wonderful, but I think they do a great job. And one reason we at IREX love this program so much is because it's so near and dear to our own mission. You see, our very reason for being is to invest in people and communities in order to promote more just, more prosperous, and more inclusive societies around the world. We do this by engaging and empowering youth, by strengthening educational, civic, and governing institutions, by extending access to quality education and information, and by cultivating leaders at all levels of society. Mandela Washington Fellows, you are now part of this mission, and I invite you to join us in promoting more just, more prosperous, and more inclusive societies across Africa and around the world. We are now going to turn to our very esteemed panel. I hope you enjoy it, and please join me in welcoming them and also thanking again our friends at the State Department and the Congress. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Congressman Hank Johnson from Georgia, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton from the District of Columbia, Rachael Mpiriirwe Kaigo, 2018 Fellow from Uganda, and the Moderator, Worku Gachou of Covington, Burling.
Great. Hello, Yali 2018 Fellows. How's everyone doing today? Great, great. I walked in, I saw the energy in the lobby, and I knew that I was in the right place. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with everyone. I am Worku Gachou. I'm a policy advisor at Covington and Burling, where I'm part of our firm's Africa practice, where we help companies and corporates navigate to be successful in their business endeavors on the continent. So it's a true honor to be here amongst all of you. My background's actually from Capitol Hill. I worked on the Foreign Affairs Committee for Chairman Ed Royce, where I managed the Africa portfolio for a number of years. So I've got to interact with the impressive group of Yali Fellows each year at our embassies throughout the continent, at the universities, and here in Washington. So it's a true privilege and honor to be here and moderate this panel. What's also unique is, there's an old adage in Washington, once you're a staffer, you're always a staffer. So being here, being able to moderate a panel with two members of Congress is different, because normally it's the members of Congress that are asking the staff the questions. But today, I get to ask them some questions. So to my left is Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. She is the representative for the District of Columbia. She's actually my member of Congress, since I live in the district. And she is the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Highways and Transit, and she serves on two committees, the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform and the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. To her left is Congressman Hank Johnson from Georgia. He serves on the Committee on Armed Services and the Committee on the Judiciary. And then to his left is Rachael from Uganda, and 2018 Yali Fellow, which seems like she definitely has a little cheering section over here. Are there any fellows from Ethiopia? I expect you to be my cheering section over there, okay? The first thing I wanted to start off for both Congresswoman Holmes Norton and Mr. Johnson is, having worked as a staffer in Congress, one of the major things I learned is that all politics is local, and each of you represent a distinct, diverse set of constituents. And I'm curious, how do you explain to your respective constituents that investing in Africa's youth is important for U.S. foreign policy?
Well, that's not very difficult for me. The city that I represent, the nation's capital, the District of Columbia, has many African Americans, and many of us who have been part of the struggle of Africans for their full freedom. While it is true that people look to see what you have done for them, they also appreciate that we represent everybody in the United States. And because my district, until I suppose 10 years ago, was a majority African American, it's now about 50-50. There is a great respect for Africa and for the work I'm able to do on matters affecting the continent.
That's great. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, and I'm very happy to be here with you all today. I represent the 4th Congressional District of Georgia, which is on the eastern suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. And in that district, it's approximately 60% African American, and most of the people in the district, or many of the people in the district, have at least 2 years of college education. And so people in my district understand the value of good relationships with foreign countries, because, as a matter of fact, many of my constituents are from foreign countries, or from they are part of the diaspora, and so it's natural that they support our efforts to forge greater bonds between particularly nations in Africa and the United States of America.
That's great. That's great. Both of their universities in both of your districts, Howard University in the District of Columbia and Clark Atlanta in your district.
Well, if I could correct you, Clark Atlanta sits outside of my district.
Sorry, but your alma mater.
My alma mater.
Correct. And
Our
so
claimer.
Yes. So I think there are a number of fellows here, both from Clark and Howard.
CAU. in the house.
And so, you know, as much as getting to spend time in those universities is an experience for the fellows from the continent, I think there's also an important aspect for the students that are at those universities. And one interesting thing to note is, along with this program is a reciprocal exchange where Americans get to go and spend time on the continent. So I'm curious, what benefits do you see from the fellows actually participating and engaging in both Howard and Clark Atlanta?
Well, I'm very pleased that some of the fellows have in fact been engaged with Howard University. It is, if I may say so, the best of the African American universities in the United States. It is considered the center of African American education. Now, Howard has a very long history with Africa and African nations. Many African leaders for many years were educated right here at Howard University. So there is a symbiotic relationship between Howard University and the continent, and you might and everybody might understand why. I'm sure that continues because of the number of students, not only from Africa, but from across the world that come to Howard University every year.
Yeah, Clark Atlanta University, formerly known as Clark College, sits as a part of the AU Center, the Atlanta University Center, which is composed of Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Morris Brown, and also the International Theological Seminary. And those colleges and universities have been around for a century and a half. And they are private institutions. They have weathered the storms over the years of funding issues, but they still produce quality graduates. And HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities, play a unique role in America in terms of preparing African Americans for the professional world. And, but not just African Americans. At Clark Atlanta University, you'll find a multinational contingent of students, many from Africa. And so I think we share, these HBCUs, we share a special niche, and that's not to cast any aspersions upon the majority schools that some of you all had the good fortune to attend while you were in this session. All education is good, and I'm just happy that you all, you 700, were able to come here to this country and participate, see how our higher education system works. And I look forward to more opportunities for African Americans to travel to Africa and see and experience life there among you. So what you're doing is creating these relationships, which I hope will exist throughout your lives.
That's great, thank you. Rachael, I want to turn to you. We've heard from policymakers here about why it's important that the US government invests in the next generation of African leaders. But I want to get your perspective from the continent, why you think it's important that the US government is investing in you and your fellows from the continent.
Thank you. I'm called Rachael Mpiriirwe. I was in Bridgewater State University, and I come from Uganda. So I think it's important for the US to invest in Africa, because Africa is actually the youngest, it has the youngest youth population in the world. Over 200 million young people are from Africa, and 60% of the unemployment rates in Africa are with young people. So if you look at a population of young people that are unemployed, and they have gone to school, they are energetic and they are creative, if they are not invested in, chances are high that there will be a breeding ground for crime. It will be a fishing ground for terrorists, it will be a fishing ground for murderers, it will be a fishing ground of all sorts of crimes. So I think it's important for such a program to be in Africa, to keep the young people busy, to keep them interested in their leadership, and to keep them going. That's why I think it's important for US to keep investing in Africa.
That's great. And just, on the topic of getting youth employment and youth engagement, I want to ask both of you kind of what has your journey and throughout Congress and your leadership path influenced your work in promoting youth engagement, youth involvement?
Yeah, I think as I get older, I appreciate more the responsibility that I have as an elder, if you will, to mentor young people. And you cannot make such a relationship. You can put yourself in a position where others, younger people, can aspire to learn from you. And so I try to uphold myself in such a way that I'm open to young people, and I actually want to attract young people so that I can give back, so that I can transfer my knowledge and experience to them so that they can use whatever they find positive about that in their own pursuits. And in that way, just one by one, I can have an impact on creating a positive future for myself as well as for my children and your children also. So it takes us all, it takes a village. I try to play my role as an elder in that way. And I've always tried to do that. Even when I was a young lawyer practicing law, I would try to have interns coming into my office and working and learning. They may not have been much younger than myself at that time, but I was in a position to be able to serve as a platform for someone else to stand on my shoulders.
Yeah. Congressman?
Well, I'm not sure what your question is about young people, involving young people in the Congress. There are, of course, I don't know if you meant personal involvement or involvement
just in terms of policies. Yeah, policies that you've promoted.
In terms of policy, I think the Congress of the United States is centered really to the extent that we can focus Congress on Africa, are less centered on youth than these days when we're trying to focus Congress on its obligations to the continent itself. I mean, we're in a period of real disengagement from the world. And as Frank and both Hank and I are members of the Congressional Black Caucus in Congress that devotes considerable time to Africa in particular. We have delegations that go to Africa. When matters are on the floor regarding Africa, we're always at the forefront as advocates for the continent. We are in a period when you ask about youth engagement, we're trying to keep Congress engaged in countries around the world, and especially in foreign aid to such countries around the world at a time where there have been huge tax cuts that result in budgets that call for reductions in foreign aid and in foreign engagement and in United States engagement in the continent.
Okay, and since you touched on the Congressional Black Caucus, as many of us here are aware, former Congressman Ron Dellums passed away on Monday. and he was one of the first founders of the CBC and was extremely engaged throughout his 27-year career on the fight against apartheid in South Africa. And I'm curious, I think early on in your career, you overlapped with Congressman Dellums, and if you could just share some memories and experiences of your time in Congress with him on the anti-apartheid movement.
Well, I should say to your fellows that there's no member of Congress that spent more time on the continent than Ron Dellums, who died this week, a former member of the House of Representatives. I knew him well because he chaired both what is called the District of Columbia Committee. We don't have that anymore, I saw to that, and a committee, but when he chaired it, he paid special attention to the District of Columbia in the way we would most desire. And he was chairman of the Armed Forces Committee. What is most memorable from the point of view of your fellows is the role he played as the chief sponsor of the act which imposed sanctions because of apartheid in on South Africa. And by the way, that bill was vetoed by Ronald Reagan, and in the 20th century, it's only one bill whose veto was overturned. So you see, the sanctions bill against racial segregation and animosity in South Africa had across-the-board support here, and Ron Dellums, it was his bill. He led that bill for almost 15 years before it got passed. And while I overlapped with Ron Dellums, I was not in Congress when I became a member of the Free South Africa movement. And on the outside, we were trying to press for what Ron Dellums was trying to achieve in the way of sanctions. In the Congress, there are 4 of us in that movement went in told the South Africans we'd like to come, the South African embassy, the ambassador, we'd like to come and see him. We came to see him, and then we said we were not going to leave. That started what was called the Free South Africa movement here in the nation's capital. People from all over the United States, almost every elected official, members of Congress, got arrested as a part of the Free South Africa movement as a result of our sit-in, as it were, in the South African embassy. And it was one of the actions which led to the final passage of the sanctions bill, and of course the rest, including Nelson Mandela, is history.
It's a powerful story. Rachael, in preparing for this panel, I was inspired to learn that your organization encourages youth involvement in public policy discussions from an early age. And I want to ask you first, why do you think it's important to get the younger generation engaged in policy issues? But secondly, how do you go about getting the younger generation interested in policy issues? You know, I have 2 cousins that are 18, and the only thing they care about right now is what's on their Instagram and Snapchat. And so I'm just curious, what is your platform in which you get the younger generation excited about these issues?
Thank you. I would first talk about why I think it's important for young people to take part in policy formulations and decision making. First of all, like I mentioned earlier, we are the biggest population in Africa. Back to my country, we are the most in my country. So it's important for us to take part in policy formulation because of our numbers, so that our leaders are able to come up with policies that are youth-centered, policies that are able to favor us to be able to compete ably. Because if we are taking part in policy formulation, then we will not have leaders overstaying in power. Apparently in my country, we had an age limit, but it has been removed because the people that are making decisions for us are not youth. They do not have youths at heart, so they end up locking us out of it because we did not participate. But not only that, but we also have to participate so that we are able to demand for accountability from the different leaders that we have. If you have not taken part in the designing of a policy, then you will not even be able to ask for accountability. And most of the things that are being made, the policies that they are coming up with, are for our own good. So I always encourage young people to take part in policy making. And how do we do this? Like you said, your nieces use, they're always online for Instagram, on WhatsApp. We are still using that same online platforms to encourage people to take part in policy and decision making. Recently, we had, back in my country, we had an increment of, there was a tax imposed on mobile money, yet most of the young people use mobile money. But through social media, we still encourage people to push the government and press the government, and the tax was reduced. So we still use the platforms where young people are to encourage them to take part. And then we also encourage young people to join community organizations. Most community organizations have places for volunteering, or community organizations that are into policy. They always have platforms and they always have spaces for young people to go and volunteer. So we encourage young people to go there and volunteer. And then there are other forms, like there's the Inter-Party Youth Platform. This is a platform for youth from different political parties. And because they reach young people most by the fact that they are under parties, then we use those platforms to get to young people, to help them, to give them the information that will trigger them to be able to participate in policies.
Oh, that's impressive, that's impressive. Both of you, have various organizations, businesses, grassroots campaigns that come to your office that try to have you support or be against certain policy initiatives that are working its way through Congress. I'm curious, when you make your decisions, how do you take into consideration the grassroots movements from youth, from students? I mean, does that have more sway on you? How does that influence your thinking?
Yeah, it's always good to be in touch with one's constituents, and it's always good to have an idea of what people across the nation are thinking. And we pick up that information through various mediums, but the most effective one is to be talking to people eye to eye. And I find that as far as young people are concerned, their concerns tend to be uniform and across the country. And so their views are very important because we realize, or at least I do, that they are our voters. And if they're not voting now, we're trying to get them enthusiastic about voting. And so that means that what they have to say has tremendous influence on our decisions in terms of what policies we support. I happen to believe that I don't think there's much divergence between my core values and what young people are thinking today. And so it's kind of easy for me to be in sync with the young people. But if I were out of sync with them, I would definitely, in this day and age, be attuned to their views on things and perhaps wise enough to incorporate those views in my decision-making on legislation. And if not, then I would be at peril of being voted out of office. I believe that the young people today are just that powerful in my district.
In terms of your question, delegations do come to see us. Sometimes they call lobbyists. Sometimes they are simply people who want to draw issues to our attention. So it really matters when you consider how many things are on the plate of the United States Congress to have a delegation come to see members of Congress. And sometimes there's so many delegations that want to see members of Congress. Some of them represent business interests, as you indicated. Some of them represent your own constituents, right, who come to see you from home. And some of them, in fact, I guess many of them, perhaps the largest numbers of them, are not even paid to come to see you, but they feel strongly about issues or parts of the world. And so many different interests come that members of Congress cannot even see them all. So some of them would be seen by my staff, some of them would be seen by me. Now, if a delegation came that wanted to talk to me about Africa, you can bet your bottom dollar that I would want to see them myself. There's a Congressional Black Caucus sponsored for years a very special appropriation for the continent, for example. So it really does matter if you have issues that matter to you to come to see your member of the House of Representatives or the Senate of the United States.
Great, thank you so much.
How you doing? Good to see you.
We've been joined, hey Senator Coons, good to see you. We've been joined by Senator Coons from the state of Delaware. A longtime advocate, proponent, supporter of African issues on Capitol Hill. Senator Coons just rushed off the Senate floor where they were voting, so appreciate you rushing over here to make it, so thank you.
Eleanor, Delegate, I am very, very optimistic about the DC budget too.
I'll just turn to you, Senator Coons, because we're pressed for time, and I want to make sure you have an opportunity to kind of speak to the crowd here. You know, the one question I have for you is Congress has always played an important role in advancing U.S.-Africa policy. I'm thinking of legislation like the African Growth and Opportunity Act, the Electrify Africa Act, the End Wildlife Trafficking Act, all pieces of legislation that you've had a hand in and that have become law. These bills have moved our relationship forward. I'm curious, you know, are there any efforts or initiatives underway in Congress right now that can continue that momentum, that can continue that positive path?
If only all questions asked of me were so easy to answer and answer well. As you may know, we had the chance to work together on those 3 bills that he just listed. Brief, positive, good news. Some of you may have heard that in the United States, our 2 main political parties, Republicans and Democrats, are having difficulty getting along. And that in our Congress and in our national politics, we are more divided than ever. In some ways, that is true. In a very important way, it is not true. It is Republicans and Democrats working closely together that have sustained this wonderful, valuable investment in our relationship, that have created and advanced a whole series of initiatives from the Bush administration to the Obama administration to one that I am hopeful President Trump will get a chance to sign soon. Chairman Ed Royce of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican, and Senator Bob Corker, Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Republican, have been great partners in this legislation. And in the 4 years that I chaired the Africa Subcommittee, I had a great partner in Senator Isaacson. First thing this morning, I was woken up by a phone call from Harare, from Senator Flake, who is in Harare as an election observer, to talk about what he is seeing and what might happen and what comes next. So first, this is a bipartisan commitment, a deep commitment, and one that I am encouraged is sustained even in a very tough time. I want to talk briefly about a new bill that I think will be the next step in U.S.-Africa relations and work together. It's called the BUILD Act. I've worked on it for 2 years with Congressman Royce and Senator Corker. It has come out of the House. It has come out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. It is on the floor of the Senate, and we are just trying to get 2 senators to stop blocking it. So I was working on that today. Why does it matter? We have something called the Overseas Private Investment Corporation that helps do development finance. It's 40 years old. It's almost as old as I am. It is underpowered, under-resourced. China and the Scandinavian countries and France, UK, Germany all do more than we do in development finance. If this bill becomes law, it will double the amount of resources the United States put into development finance. It will strengthen our ability to take equity positions, to do loans in local currency, to issue diaspora bonds, to connect the African diaspora in the United States to development opportunities on the continent. It is a really, really good bill. And President Trump has spoken positively about it, has even tweeted positively about it, has committed to signing it, and it will be a good bipartisan initiative. And the current head of OPIC would become the head of the new development finance institution. YALI Fellows, a third of YALI Fellows are running businesses. About 40% of YALI Fellows are running nonprofits. When I've had the chance back on the continent to meet with YALI Fellows from 2 and 3 and 4 years ago, they are doing amazing work. And this new development finance institution would give us more resources to support that work. Thank you for giving me a lot of time to talk.
That sounds great. I want to make sure we have enough time to get questions from our audience. But just kind of one final kind of big takeaway. What do each of you believe that the fellows should take home with them when their fellowship ends in a couple of weeks? How can they continue what they've learned here and apply it back in their home countries?
Well, I do hope you've heard what Senator Coons said about the bipartisanship that surrounds the commitment to Africa. And I think that at a time when you wonder where the United States stands on matters in foreign affairs, because there is so much controversy on such matters, that you will take home the continuing unity about the relationship between the United States and Africa in particular.
Yeah, YALI is not a program that fosters just a myopic view of individual success. It is actually a bipartisan, international, global viewpoint based on people coming together heart to heart and doing great things, not for oneself, but for others. And so I would encourage everyone to take what you've learned thus far from the best practices that you've seen in the fields of government, business, entrepreneurship, to take those home and succeed individually while at the same time serving others.
Rachael?
I think for me, it's about commitment back home in Africa and to utilize the networks that we have gotten while here. I now know I can call someone in Gambia to give me information on peace. I can call someone in Mozambique to give me information on criminal justice. And I think it's now up to us to go back home and use this and change our country and our countries. And after what we have seen in America, choose what is applicable for us. And then we use it back home.
Yeah. That's a good answer. I don't know how you're going to follow that up, Senator.
What she said. Briefly, what I've seen when I have visited with YALI Fellows in countries from Ethiopia to Liberia who have returned is that those relationships across the continent and within your own countries become richer and stronger and more important with time, so stay in touch with each other. Think about what you've learned about us as Americans. We're different than you might have thought we are. There are warts and there are weaknesses here that maybe you didn't see or know as much before. And there are strengths and things that I hope you found admirable that perhaps you didn't know as clearly before. But to the point you just made, this is your chance to then know who you are, be reminded who you are, what it is in your family or your faith or your community that pulls you to serve, and go back and be connected to each other and to who you really are and to a sense of future and commitment And remember that together, this is a remarkable community, not of future leaders, but of current leaders for the continent that has the greatest promise for this century and that should lead our world in this century.
Right. Wonderful. Now I want to give our fellows an opportunity to ask questions. People are excited. Okay. Let's start with the gentleman in the back. Yeah. If you could say your name, what country you're from, and
thank you so much.
We're at
My name is Jonabai Israel. I come from beautiful country Chad, Central Africa. I was placed at Clark Atlanta University.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I want to ask a question about political situation in Africa. You all know that young African, according to the context of political in Africa, and especially in Central Africa, we are too far, I say too far from political position, because the context is very difficult. For example, in my country, they just removed the age to access to the presidential position for 45 years. If you have not 45 years, you cannot become president in Chad. And that seriously touched me. What are you advise us as a young leaders to take position, to develop a strategy, and to end the long term, the long dictatorial position in Africa? Thank you so much.
So it's an interesting question about civic engagement and participation and how they can actually serve. And so, I mean, all three of you are elected politicians. And so, you know, your desire, your drive to serve, and how do you kind of nurture that?
Yeah, I think it's important that anyone who's looking to advance into a policy-making role in their country to become an expert on the rules of whatever body it is that you seek to enter into. If you know the rules, you can use those rules to your advantage. Now, even if you don't agree with all of the rules now that are in place, you do have to follow them in order to get in to the body. And then once you're in, you're in a position to change. So knowing the rules and also having a big heart for the people that you are serving, because you're not advancing to that position for your own personal aggrandizement. You're doing it to be able to help make your country better and help the people in that country to prosper. So with good relationships with the people, it's the people that will propel you into that position, and your knowledge of the process and your sense of timing and your wisdom will help make your efforts very successful. And lastly, to not give up, not be defeated by the obstacles that are in your way. Regard those obstacles as challenges to be overcome, and do so without blaming or complaining. Just move forward and do what you know that you need to do.
You know, I don't know what the life expectancy is in your country. But
in my country?
In his country.
Oh.
I'm talking to the, was it Chad?
Yes.
I'm talking to the young man who asked the question. But I don't think in any country you should have to be middle-aged in order to hold the highest office. Now, you know, correct me, there is an age for the House and the Senate. I'm not sure there is any age to be President of the United States. I don't believe in the Constitution there is any age to be President of the United States. And of course, And of course, experience has its value. But I can tell you this as someone who believed you're in the nation's capital, which was a segregated city. You're in a country that was segregated. The way in which we changed our country, we mounted a movement. I urge you to have young people mount a movement. First, go to the polls yourselves, but then mount a national movement so that that age can be corrected.
Senator Coons?
I've been in elected service 18 years. But I did not, when I was 20, think, oh, I'll be president or I'll be senator. I started working in education and in helping to provide housing for those who were homeless. There are many, many important things we can do. I agree with what my colleagues have said. The path towards leadership should be open, and we need the energy and the optimism of youth. I spent 10 years in county government, local government, working on things like improving water and sewers and improving police and making libraries available, doing very local things. None of you would have ever heard of me if that's what I'd done my whole career. But it made a real difference to where I'm from. So I just want to encourage you, there's a huge amount of work to be done. There's lots and lots of service we need, whether a nonprofit or local government or national government. Remember, Madiba said that anyone can divide and tear down. The real heroes are those who unite and build up. We need you to be the heroes who build up, and we need to work to make sure there aren't artificial barriers in your way to making your contributions.
Great. Great. You, from Uganda, of course.
Thank you very much. My name is Eleanor from Uganda, and I was at Bridgewater State University with Rachael. I just wanted to make a comment in line with what Rachael says and what is being spoken about participation in policy making. I think it's high time young people involve themselves in places where decisions are being made. We must get up and be participants in the politics because that's where all decisions are being made. There was a discussion yesterday about decisions on sports and implementation of government policies. If you're not going to be in Parliament where the budget is passed, be sure that anything that you want will not happen. And trust me, this space is not going to be given to you on a silver platter. There is no political space which has ever been given by appointment. So we must find it within ourselves as young people to be competitive with all the skills that we have acquired, be at the place where decisions are going to be made, and that's when the change will come for Africa. Africa needs young people. It needs a transformation where young people are making the decisions and the correct decisions. Thank you.
That's right. That gentleman in the corner who's quite excited to ask a question.
Thank you. My name is Jasper. I'm from Sierra Leone, and I was at Georgia State University.
Georgia.
My question is, I want to ask the panel, what assurances do we have as young African leaders of the continuing progressive partnership between the US and Africa, considering the current apparent hostility of the current President Donald Trump to poor African countries, referencing him referring to poor African countries as shithole countries? What hope do we have that this current administration will continue in progressive partnership with African countries? Thank you.
Senator Coons, do you want to take that?
Let me make sure I heard. His core question was, what assurances do we have that the current presidential administration in the United States will continue some of our progressive partnership over many years?
Yes.
That's the question. Look, I am not of President Trump's party, and I do not often agree with President Trump's policies on many areas. I have questioned or criticized him on many fronts. But the single most important piece of legislation that I expect to be able to get done in this Congress has his enthusiastic public leadership and support. I celebrate that. The way I try to conduct myself as an elected official is that when President Trump accomplishes something good, whether it's the return of our soldiers' remains from North Korea, or it is a declaration that we will never recognize the annexation of Crimea, two positive things that happened in the last week, I will give him credit. Where there are things I strongly disagree with and we don't have enough time, I state that as well. I think it is because there are good, dedicated professionals in the Department of State, in USAID, in leadership throughout our government, in the executive branch, who know and see the value of a strong U.S.-Africa relationship, that we will continue to have that relationship. President Trump's Secretary of Commerce just led a whole group of American business people to visit 4 different countries across the continent. The President has committed to continuing many of the policies that we have built together on a bipartisan basis. This is where my optimism rests. It's in knowing that in Congress, in the House and the Senate, there is sustained support for these policies, and that there are folks in leadership at USAID and in the State Department that continue to implement them and to move them forward. Frankly, here we are again, folks. We have 700 people here. This is an important relationship between the United States and Africa, and even in the second year of the Trump administration, it is fully funded, it is fully supported, it is moving forward. I think we ought to just look at the evidence in front of us and be hopeful that it will be sustained.
So on that optimistic note, unfortunately, Senator Coons, I'm being told that you have a vote that you have to catch.
Yes, I do.
So if you want to duck out, or so this will be the final question.
I have to go.
Those ladies right there in the middle, just because I love your outfits. Sure, yes, yeah. Well, first let's give a round of applause to Senator Coons. Thank you, Senator Coons.
The vote's been called.
All right. I'm Clifford Conte from Cameroon. And I did my fellowship at the prestigious Presidential Precinct. And before I ask my question, there's something I want to hit on. I know that Africa must not bemoan its past, so I wouldn't like to talk about slavery and colonization anymore. But it's also good to also know what slavery and colonization has done in investing in the rigid regimes that we currently have and the political systems that we currently have in Africa. And I think that today is time for truth and reconciliation. And we must admire President Obama and the US for bringing us as allies to this forum. But the question is, what next for us? What do we do to erase the term neocolonialism? What do we do to invest in us properly? It is true we're investing in African leadership. How will you teach us to make planes rather than putting us in your planes to bring back? Will you teach us what are you doing in transferring technology? Because the technology and the power built from past to present. No nations are built from slavery and colonization. But today there's need for you to tell us what you're doing to transfer technology, because it's the means for neo-colonization. Colonialism is coming back to the present. If you don't invest in the African youth by transferring technology to Africa, we are going to remain dependent on the West and you. So what do you do?
Let me indicate this. Because the United States has not moved more rapidly on investments and otherwise engagement in Africa, we are seeing other countries moving into Africa and establishing precisely the relationships with Africa that you would expect the United States to establish. China, for example, understands that Africa is rising, and China is all over the continent. We are not all over the continent. So I want you to know that there are many of us who are cognizant that if anything, we are behind in not only investment, but certainly investment, but behind other countries who have understood that Africa is the future. And you have in the Congress of the United States many of us who are pressing our country to catch up with other countries like China, who have become so embedded all over Africa and become friends with African nations, so that we maintain the kind of relationship you would expect the United States of America to have with the continent.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that when President Trump uttered his comment about the type of countries that are in Africa, that comment about the shithole nations, it did not just offend you, but it offended us here in America, the African diaspora, the African Americans. It deeply offended us and it hurt us. And because we share this bond of color, and we have had to fight since we have come to this country, that since we were brought to this country, we've had to fight for the freedom that we enjoy now. And so we have so much in common with the people, with our brothers and sisters from the continent of Africa, and how we have been regarded by those in power. And so now that change is upon us throughout the world, and Africa is rising, we've just finished 8 years under the first African-American president, Barack Obama, who established this program. And so we have so much in common that you can rely on your brothers and sisters here in America, along with our friends and allies, to do what is right by Africa and to work to bring good health, education, prosperity throughout that continent, because what's good for Africa is good for the United States of America. So let's keep these bonds that you have established while you have been here in America with Americans. Let's keep those bonds strong. Let's strengthen them, and let's use them together as we all advance towards a brighter future for us all. And let's not be discouraged by this temporary situation here in the United States of America. We elect presidents every 4 years, and we're coming up on another election soon.
Rachael, do you have anything to add?
For me, I can only add that maybe we still use what I could concur with him, that we still need to use the networks that we got while here, and maybe not to over-depend on the US to develop ourselves, but to also go back to us and use what we have to develop ourselves.
That's right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us, and thank you, IREX, for hosting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's thank our moderator also. Thank you.